Hello and welcome to this edition of Fish Stripes Live. We are here. We are ticking away until the trade deadline, but there still is one more series before that. And we are here to preview that between the Miami Marlins and the Cincinnati Reds. As we can see, small panel here today. We have Eli and we also have Isaac, who is feeling under the weather. He is currently on the 1-day IL, but decided to join us here today. How are you guys feeling? How are you guys holding up? And are you guys ready for this series?
Yeah, this is a mess, this show. I hope everybody could hear me clearly. I'm not on my usual computer because it chose to crap out at the worst time, right after our staff meeting, but right before the show. So I didn't mean to put the clown up on the screen at the very beginning, but like you said, we're kind of flying by the seat of our pants, just reacting to what's going on with the deadline. We're obviously going to, at the very end, make our predictions for the Red series, but we know you guys don't really care very much about that in this particular setting. It's all about what's going on at the deadline, what's not going on with the Marlins, but thankfully other stuff happening around the league that does impact the Marlins pretty directly. So we're going to break that down.
Yeah, really quick, I wanted to go in and talk about this Mets series. There's really nothing great coming out for Miami. I think you count the positives on one hand, and even that, maybe even three fingers. What did you guys see from that Mets series, and were there any positives to take away? We'll go with Isaac.
No, none whatsoever. I think you got to be pleased with LeBlanc finally getting the call, him having a couple of starts, him getting his first career extra base hit, his first career home run out of the way. It's big for him, big for the player. He's getting the start again tonight against the Reds. So I think that's really the only positive. The starting pitching wasn't good. The bullpen wasn't good. The offense wasn't good. So I think the one bright spot, I might be missing something because I chose not to remember much, was Charles LeBlanc.
Yeah, for people that didn't know, he is the face on the thumbnail of this video today. That's Charles LeBlanc, who was put on the roster on Friday, didn't play until Saturday, and then in his first two games, 3 extra base hits in his first 2 games. Every time he didn't get an extra base hit, he struck out, and he did get picked off second base, I think, late in one of those games. It was a mixed bag for him, but more good than bad, a lot more good than bad, and it is refreshing to see that for the third straight game tonight, he is in the lineup. So he was at has it been third base for all these games?
Yes.
He's kind of run together. And I think that is his best position. He plays third, he plays second, he plays left in an emergency, he plays first. But I would say third base is the one where he fits best with his team. And I don't think he's going to be a true everyday player the rest of the year. That's going to come down to his bat. I mean, if he does have extra base hits in every game, then maybe he is an actual everyday player on this team. So he was no doubt the bright spot. Him and Jake Fishman making his debut. So much pun potential with that guy, that crafty lefty, just like LeBlanc. Both of those guys, not just Rule 5 draft picks, minor league phase of the Rule 5 draft picks. The success rate of those guys is so low. Really, the only recent comparable you can have in Marlins history of those guys actually sticking around to the majors and doing fairly well is Justin Bour. Justin Bour was a minor league Rule 5 guy who I think the most of his first year was in AAA, got called up. And as we know, over a handful of years, he had some good production. So that is really the kind of the realistic best case scenario for somebody like LeBlanc, is he turns into a semi-regular player over a number of years that is led by his bat and by his versatility. And this was off to a pretty exciting start for him.
Yeah, I wanted to go ahead and talk about the pitching from Miami. One of the games, I believe, I should say all the games, nothing great. We had the Sandy start, which usually means Marlins will probably win it. He'll go to the 8th, 7th inning. But this one, he had only 5 innings, 8 hits, 4 earned runs, 3 walks, and exactly 100 pitches. Isaac, you were there. I was covering it. You were there as a fan. What did you see from Sandy that game, and really what was off from him?
The one thing, which is the same thing that's been off from him since the Pittsburgh start, I think it's just the command. He's just not getting ahead of batters as much. He's not throwing that first pitch strike. Usually he's been a strike machine when he's at his best, which is such a great improvement from where he was when he was initially a prospect. But I think that's where lately, I'm not sure why it's been off, is he hasn't been able to, get to 2 strikes fairly quickly. He has not been able to finish them off when he does get to 2 strikes. I think the critical point of that game was when, you had a man on second base and Thomas Nido was at the plate. by far the weakest hitter in that lineup. He had him 0-2, and he ended up walking him. So you can't have that, and so un-Sandy-like. So it was tough to see him struggle really for the first time this year. It was definitely his worst start of the season. So it was tough to see him. And we were talking about the positives, I failed to give Nick Neidert credit. And that was definitely probably the best we've seen him as a Marlin, or if not close. So, it was ironic. Sandy and Pablo have their probably worst starts of 2022, and Nick Neidert comes in and has the best start of the three.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people would have had that going into this series. I really wanted to quickly and talk about the Marlins' woes, especially in that first game. I believe when Stephen Oakert gave up a home run, and then the Marlins just fell apart after that with Edwin Diaz almost throwing an immaculate inning. Eli, what did you see from the Marlins going up against Edwin Diaz and just being so overmatched and only took 10 pitches to take out those three hitters?
It wasn't an immaculate inning, which
Almost.
is good considering that you look across baseball and there was somebody that threw an immaculate inning for Reed Demers for the Angels. So they had it better off than that team, I suppose, in that situation. I like Edwin Diaz so much that in my article that came out a couple of days ago, I advocated for trading for his younger brother who was on the Reds, Alexis Diaz. It's amazing. I mean, what Edwin is doing this year for a full-time reliever over a full-length season, the extent that he is striking out most of the batters that he's facing is absurd. When you compare to a Marlins team and you compare to even the major league averages, striking out more than twice the number of batters as like a typical MLB pitcher does. It's remarkable. That was a trade that has had quite a lot of ups and downs with Edwin Diaz at the beginning, got off to a pretty bad start, and now he's in the division and he's been haunting them this year, and we'll see whether or not the Mets keep him around long term, it seems like, but he's emerged as the very best closer in all baseball.
Yeah, I also want to go ahead and move ahead a couple days and talk about that Pablo start, because a lot of people were thinking that Pablo might not even start that game, that he might have been keep him there for the trade deadline, but ultimately the front office decided to start Sandy. Not Sandy, Pablo. Isaac, what did you see from that start from Pablo, and just him even starting and then him having probably the worst outing this season for Pablo?
Yeah, I think Craig said it best. Whether or not they were planning on trading him, I think it just would have made a lot of sense of pushing back one day. And I think he really did say perfectly on that Twitter thread where, hey, push him back to tonight and tell all GMs, hey, wait until 5 p.m., give us your best offers. And if not, he's pitching with certainty on where he's going to be. But instead, he's pitching against a team that has had his number his entire career. They saw him, I think, twice in spring training this year. He mentioned that post game. And in return, he struggled. He gave up the most hits he's given up in his career. And, whatever, I don't think that start killed any value. Of course not. I'm not going to say that. But it was just it was a weird decision to have him start that day, in my opinion. I'm not sure who else they could have. So, obviously Kim Ng and company they know a lot more than I do. But I just thought that was interesting. And obviously, the start, you have to assume he was maybe tipping a little bit. I think Eli mentioned in the group chat, somebody did, that the way they just weren't reacting to the changeup the way that teams usually do. It's his best pitch. It's a phenomenal pitch, and they were just sitting on it like it was nothing. So I think that was a big part of it as well. So I'm very curious to see how he does his next start. Whether it's with Miami or not, we'll wait to see.
As Devin points out in the chat, and something I mentioned is that they didn't hit any home runs off of him. They didn't come close to hitting any home runs. This was just a lot of line drives and ground balls. Yeah. Of course, a little bit of good luck, but also some just very good situational hitting. So I think it speaks more towards, you give more credit to the Mets than blame to Pablo. I think they did pick up an indication in his delivery about what type of pitch was coming, and they were able to execute and do, when they got the pitch that they knew was coming, they were able to put it in the right spots to obviously keep the line moving and end up with a gazillion base hits, even as the game went on. Like, even after Pablo left, they were piling up hits against Fishman and against Brigham, against everybody that they were doing. That's an amazing team. And it's, so when you're Marlins in this situation, they caught the Marlins at their most vulnerable time right before they get even more of their arms finally back from the injured list. And they looked like a team that had like fallen over a team that was ready to punt on the rest of this year. It was a really uninspiring game, except for the new guys. The new guys were the only bright spots, and they were the only ones that made the scores even semi-respectable on Saturday and Sunday, or I should say
Yeah,
Friday and Sunday.
and one of the new guys, pitchers. I want to talk a little bit, even though he just recently got DFA, Jake Fishman, because he had a really great performance in his debut, coming in relief for Powell, having 3 and 1/3 innings, 4 hits, 1 run. Eli, what did you see from Jake Fishman? Even though now he's DFA'd, and do you even think that was the right decision for him to get DFA'd after his performance?
I guess I can't really object to it too much. He throws like 88 miles per hour fastballs, and he's a relief only type of prospect, as well as he was doing in AAA. They are making a gamble that he's not going to get claimed off of waivers, and I don't think he will, just because of the lack of stuff. They are betting on stuff, as you may have seen tonight, the fact that they brought up Honoris Zabala, who really has absolutely nothing going for him aside from his pure stuff. That just shows you their priorities. And I think a lot of other major league teams feel the exact same way, that they would rather go with the stuff guy than the one who is just does a finesse job the way that Fishman did. And unfortunately, you could see it coming because of how long they stretched him out. They stretched him out to 49 pitches in that previous game, which means he was not going to be available for this entire series anyway. He just was not going to be physically able to recover for a few days in the meantime. It opens up the door for him to come back later this year, I should say, once he clears waivers, and if they find a way to put him back on the 40-man roster. I mean, the way that he's performed, you like to imagine that this is not the last time you see him before the end of the year. It's very awkward, considering that they are in this in-between period where if the replacement is Honoris Zabala, it's hard to make the case that that's an actual improvement to the roster. They just wanted to get as many fresh arms as possible. And that's the reality of being at the very bottom of the bullpen. You're always subject to getting sent down or squeezed off in favor of a fresh arm at this time of year.
Yeah. Now I just wanted to move on a little bit and talk about some of the trades that happened today. I wanted to go ahead and move on from the Mets series because I think there's a lot of negative there, and we could just move on from that because that was not a pretty series from the Marlins. The first trade I wanted to talk to you guys about tonight was about the Josh Hader trade, because I believe that it literally came out of nowhere. One of the best closers in baseball over the last few years, getting traded to the Padres for Taylor Rogers, Dylanson Lamet, and some prospects. Isaac, what did you see from that trade? Josh Hader getting traded, and maybe what was your reaction to that? Because that's easily one of the biggest trades so far this season.
Yeah, I think unless Soto gets dealt, that's going to be the blockbuster of the deadline. It's a pretty slow-moving deadline so far. That was wow. I think the Brewers were really smart to do this. They have such a crazy bullpen. Devin Williams hasn't allowed a run since May 10th or since May. He hasn't given up a run, and he's just been phenomenal. He had that little tough start to the season. Hader, other than that little 6-game stretch in which he gave up like 4 home runs, he's been nearly unhittable. He is the best closer in Major League Baseball by far. So they were able to trade him to get another closer in return, who granted isn't as good in Taylor Rogers, but he can still get saves. They get Nelson Lamet, who would all depend on his health to see if they get them to get value from him. And then the prospects they get back. So to me, it's, you're basically going down a little bit with the reliever you get back, and you're getting a bunch of prospects in return. So it's a pretty good haul for the Brewers, which just keeps their contending window a little bit longer. It keeps it open for this year and for beyond. So I think it's a very good move for the Brewers.
Yeah, Eli, what are your thoughts on this? Because I believe Hader still has control for another season, and then also the Padres are just trying to see if they could still trade for Soto. And what do you think this puts the Padres in getting Hader?
I was advocating for the Marlins to trade for Hader during the offseason. Like, I didn't see it as a sure thing that he would even start the year on the team, because just as good as he is and as consistent as he is year to year, he is getting really expensive. Like, he's earning an $11 million salary this year, and then next year he's going to get a big raise in his final year of ARB. And then, of course, after that, as a free agent, he might set some records for average salary for a reliever, just given how dominant he is. So it's the timing of it is clearly shocking, but as Isaac said, you can understand the thinking behind it. The Brewers have done a terrific job of getting other great relievers lined up and put in the right matchups that they're just fine. And this was such a unique trade because in return, they get a pretty good reliever themselves. I think it was Taylor Rogers. I always get him and his brother confused. But from San Diego, who was closing games over there. So it is a downgrade, but not a dramatic one at that one spot. And in addition to Rogers, they get a they're gambling on Dinelson Lamet, who has amazing stuff whenever he's healthy, but he's rarely healthy. And they were able to get some other young talent in return. So 4 players coming back. I think they did a good job of balancing the present and the future. I think it's just a win-win because the Padres are a team that their fans are in heaven with all the star power that they keep bringing in one after the other, from Machado to obviously calling up Tatis and extending Tatis to bringing in, trading for Sean Manaea, trading for, I'm missing some of the other stars that they've brought.
Darvish.
Yeah. Darvish. And extending Joe Musgrove, bringing in Blake Snell. It's an expensive team at this point, but one that is going to really poised to finally make a deep postseason run for the first time in forever. I'm jealous. I'm jealous of where the Padres are at. They are a fun organization that wasn't all that different from the Marlins a handful of years ago, as a mediocre team, if not worse than that, kind of in the wilderness. And it all starts with ownership buying in. And the fact that the Padres are spending like pretty close to $200 million on payroll. Who could have ever seen that coming for a team in that, what is like a not huge baseball market?
Yeah, and they're also getting back Fernando Tatis, who's just demolishing batting practice. Where do you think this lands for the Padres in the Soto race? Do you think this is something that they're still able to do? You mentioned their payroll. You mentioned their prospects and how ownership is trying to liven the fan base and really improve the team. Do you think this improves, decreases their chances in getting Soto?
I'm still skeptical of Soto being traded at this deadline. But what this did is that it still left the odds of it wide open because they didn't trade any of their conventional top prospects. They didn't trade, just off the top of my head, CJ Abrams or Robert Hassel III. Like, they have pieces that would still be very intriguing to the Nationals, I think. Now, if they were to do that, it would totally wipe out their farm system depth, but it would put them in a position where the next few years they are almost on par with the Dodgers, which is what they're trying to get to. At this moment, they're clear still underdogs to me in their own division, and it's already too late for them to make up in the division. But even going into the postseason, they will still need quite a bit to go right in order to win their first championship ever. But everybody obviously is interested in what happens with Soto, because if he does move, it's one of the biggest deadline trades you've ever seen. I'm not sure if it's coming together. I think what the latest report is that the Padres are in it and that the Cardinals could be like perhaps the most likely fit there, given their combination of actual major league talent and farm system depth. I think that would still be, to me, if it does happen at the deadline, I think the Cardinals are the most likely Soto landing spot. I don't, unfortunately, the Marlins don't really fit into the equation anywhere with him. I tried early on in the process to take a Marlins angle to it, but really the only thing is that you want him outside of the NL East when it's all said and done, so that he doesn't face the Marlins head to head as often as he has been.
Yeah, and I was a little shocked on this trade also with Josh Hader, just on the fact that the Brewers are first in their division. They're above the Cardinals in 3 games. It's just, what do you think this means for the Brewers? Like, what are they trying to say here, that even though they're in first place, they're willing to get rid of one of the, as Isaac said, they're the top closer in all of baseball?
I mean, like we said, they're not getting a downgrade in Devin Williams now taking over the closer's position, and they're getting a closer right back, someone that's been closing games for San Diego. So I think it was just, like I said, a really smart move that just left them in a good position to win the division and go pretty deep into the postseason, as well as now extending their contending window. So I think it's just a very smart move all around for the Brewers.
Yeah, and now we can move on to the next trade that happened. Let's go to New York. Let's go to Yankee Stadium. Yankees made probably one of the also biggest trades so far. today, especially in the deadline with Frankie Montas going from the A's to the Yankees, and also Lou Trevino. So it will be Trevino and Trevino dynamic there in New York. Eli, what did this mean for the market of starting pitchers and also what the Yankees are doing?
I want to correct Navi here. It's 38 people watching on YouTube, it seems, but I'm sure plenty of people are over on Twitter as well and on Facebook. For the people on Twitter, thank you for tuning in. We can't see your chats in real time and put them on the screen. So if you go over to the YouTube link instead or on Facebook, then we can actually see your comments in the chat and throw them up at the same way that we did for Navi right there. Just
We're currently at 1 million.
Regarding Montas, yeah, this is the one that I think is most relevant to what the Marlins are dealing with, because there are a lot of similarities between him and Pablo. I think just in time, I was able to get the screenshot of this between Pablo and Montas, their 2022 season comparison so far. And those rows are actually different, even though a lot of the numbers look identical across the board in terms of run prevention. They were even closer before Pablo's last start. That is what kind of brought them down to earth, a little separation, you could say. But the adjusted ERA almost identical between the two. Pablo 19% better than league average. Montas 18%. Montas is older than Pablo by a few years, but he has one fewer years of control to go before free agency. He's earning more money than Pablo is this year, but he goes deeper into games, at least historically. This year, actually, it's about identical in terms of the average start length. But Montas is a guy that on his very best days, I'd say he's more dominant than Pablo is. And like, if it was me personally being objective about it, I think I would, if I was a contending team with a choice between these two guys, I would focus more on getting Montas than I would on getting Pablo in terms of a guy that you'd really unconditionally trust in the playoffs. That's why the Yankees made this trade. They have already locked in a postseason spot. They could lose almost all their games the rest of the year, and they would still be in the postseason. All that matters to them is winning once they get there. Montas is a guy that on his best days can single-handedly win you games. So it makes a lot of sense from their perspective. And not exactly like, but in the same way that the Padres still left themselves open to doing something splashy the rest of this deadline, the final 24 hours, the Yankees did as well. Like, most of this package was trading their own pitching depth. It was trading guys that aren't as good at pitching Major League Baseballs than Montas is. And in return, at the same time, they held on to a lot of their top position player talent, the guys that we were talking about and dreaming of getting in a Pablo trade somehow, like Anthony Volpe and Oswaldo Peraza, and the other guy whose name is blanking at the very moment, also Jason Dominguez, like all their actual big chips that could be used in the future to address some other need. They're still around for the Yankees. This is about as good an organization as there is in baseball, and they kind of have showed people why at this deadline.
And where do you think this went in terms of that Luis Castillo package? Is that something the Marlins, if Pablo does get traded, do you see that happening in terms of packages? Because when you look at the Yankees package and then you go to the Seattle Mariners, it's two completely different just packages that both teams gave up. Seattle gave up multiple guys in their top 5, where the Yankees gave up their 5th, 10th, and then 2 guys, 20 and 21. Just how do you just compare those two? And is that really a big difference? Or is Castillo and Montas and Pablo, is they really that separated?
Well, there's a big difference, but this is a reminder that the Mariners are weird. Under Jerry Dipoto, like, some of the things they do are just not within the same. They sometimes speak a different language than other teams when it comes to trades. Like, it's not always a perfect on the same scale of comparing one to another. The Mariners just historically have done things in a very unorthodox way, in that I think from the outside, almost all of us thought it was a big overpay for Castillo. And while it was hopeful that would mean other starters get overpaid for as well, sometimes it's just the Mariners being weird and the Mariners also being desperate. The fact that they still need to ensure themselves a playoff spot, whereas the Yankees, as I said, a very different story. They're already going to the postseason. Now they got to do the most when they get in there. They did get quite a bit in return, just to answer Victor's question in the chat with these 4 guys. All 4 of them are significant prospects. And the headliner, Waldachuk, is, I mean, he is in most people's opinions a top 100 prospect in all of baseball. He's not a chopped liver, you could say. He is somebody that could impact the Oakland A's rotation in the very near future. The composition of the package is not what the Marlins would want, just because it was so heavy on pitching. And the Marlins want the exact opposite. If they were to trade Pablo, they'd want the headliner to be a impact bat that has a good shot at playing an up the middle position at shortstop or center field long term. And they'd probably want most of the other pieces to be bats as well. So that's the main distinction. Thank you, Devin, for agreeing with me. I don't know what part you agree with. I've been talking for a long time. Whatever I brought up, thanks for doing so. So it is a little difficult to like exactly put it into Pablo terms. The main takeaway is that the Yankees seem to be done at this deadline. Pablo is not going to be a Yankee. And if they are going to trade him, it's going to be to another contending team that's not the Yankees, and in all likelihood, not the Mariners. And that's where the conversation is over these final 24 hours, is which of these other contending teams loves Pablo enough to give a package that makes sense for the Marlins to part with him at this time. And as the minutes tick away and as this trade happens, like I think the Yankees, a lot of people circled that as a fit that would make a lot of sense for Pablo. And with them off the board at this particular time, I think we need to lean towards the likelihood, more likely than not, that Pablo is staying put. That's where I am at the moment, is that it's certainly less than 50% that he gets dealt. Just
so
because
not
how this has unfolded. Yeah.
Okay. I think yesterday was at 51%.
Yes. I think entering today and entering at the end of last night, 51%. And now I would say 37. 37.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah. Isaac, what are your thoughts on this trade? And also talking about a little bit about the Yankees. Are they seemingly the favorite? Is it the Yankees and then the field? Is that how you see it?
Well, what, to win the World Series?
Yeah.
I think they have one more big trade in them. I don't know if they're where they want to be yet, but yeah, I definitely think you have to say so. I know their closer is struggling lately, Clay Holmes. I think they might be looking for some sort of relief help. I think they match up really well with the Marlins for Anthony Bass, honestly. I think he's someone that should really be attractive for them. He keeps the ball on the ground for the most part, at least this year he has. And he's extremely cheap by Yankee standards. He's only earning $3 million next year. So I think if they were to be looking for more players, I think they'd be looking for relief help. Obviously, I don't think they need any more offense. But yeah, that trade, it was perfect. They got their guy, they got their starting pitcher, and they got their outfielder in Andrew Benintendi. So they're making moves. And I think the one last thing they want to do is get another reliever.
Yeah, and what's your percentage that Apollo gets traded? We had Eli 37. Where are you thinking?
I would have it at 49%.
Ooh.
I still think there's a chance, but after listening to the official show, very good podcast here on the Fish Stripes platform, I can see why they wouldn't. Although I still sort of disagree, but I still think there's a pretty decent shot. But now, after all these two trades, I think those are the two main teams that would have liked him. In the Mariners and the Yankees. Obviously, the Cardinals could use some help. The Twins could use some help. There's a lot of teams out there still, but I just think it's less likely that he started yesterday. And here we are, Monday, August 1st, the day before the deadline. Nothing has been reported. No teams, no players, nothing. So you have to put it at less than 50%. Just barely, though. Maybe 48.5.
I want to go ahead and talk about the other trade that happened earlier today. It involved a 3-team trade between the Rays, the Orioles, and the Houston Astros. If I can get that entire trade, it involved Trey Mancini going to the Houston Astros. Houston Astros were linked to the Marlins in terms of Garrett Cooper and someone that might be traded to there. Tampa Bay got Jose Siri. Baltimore got Seth Johnson. So just a 3-team trade there. Eli, what do you think of this trade, and how does this trade affect the Marlins?
Well, Jose Siri moving in the deal to the Rays, and I'm happy that the Marlins didn't sacrifice much to get him. I'm a big skeptic of Jose Siri, who's been a very toolsy guy, and he's been early on, over 5-6 years ago, he was regarded as a highly regarded prospect, but just never really put the tools together aside from his defense in center field. So I'm glad that the Marlins didn't like look to him as the solution at the position, which I think some people perhaps speculated that they could, considering that he was expendable in Houston. But the key here is Mancini being on the move, something that as the Orioles played so well heading towards the deadline, I think this comes now as a surprise that they didn't simply hold on to him for the remainder of the year, given how much he means to that team and what he's been through, overcoming cancer in the middle of his career and returning to being another good player. And the impact, the Marlins angle to this is how similar Mancini is to Garrett Cooper. Like I had the stats here, and it's like the same thing with Pablo and with Montas this season. These two guys have been the same dude. Look at this
defense too.
Yeah. There's some key differences that work for Mancini is, historically, outside of his unfortunate cancer battle, I mean, he'd been pretty durable in a lot of his career, and including this year, he's played significantly more. Whereas Cooper always finds a way to have these minor injury scares, sometimes just unlucky, what have you. But with Mancini, there aren't those same excuses. He can at least fake it at the outfield positions, whereas Cooper at this stage of his career, the Marlins decided strongly against that. He hasn't played a single pitch of the season in the outfield this year, only at first base. So that versatility, I guess, makes Mancini more attractive to a team like the Astros. It had been one of the few rumblings that we got about the Marlins heading into this deadline is that the Astros were checking in with Garrett Cooper, right? That came out of Houston just a few days ago. Seeing as they weren't getting great first base production this year, that Cooper was on their radar. And somebody asked this earlier in the chat about whether Cooper actually could still be traded, even though he's on the IL. And the answer is yes, he is healthy again. Cooper does not have to be kept through this deadline. He played one rehab game on Sunday and he looked fine. And that's pretty much it. He's going to rejoin the team after the trade deadline, assuming it's the Marlins or whatever team that employs him. He's going to be ready to go as soon as his IL stint is over. He is healthy again, and it was the most minor of all injuries with the wrist contusion that he suffered before. He could still be on the move. It's just the Astros were, to me, the most likely landing spot for either him or for Aguilar. And looking around at other contenders, it's harder to find what that potential fit could be for Coop. So the fact that this deal went through, it makes me, compared to Pablo, I think it's even a stronger likelihood that Coop sticks through the deadline and is still a Marlin on the other side.
And how does the contract wise work for Coop and Mancini? Do they both have years of control, arbitration, free agents? How does that compare to both players?
Let me triple check. I think Mancini is a pending free agent, and I know that Cooper has the one more year beyond this year. And this is why the Marlins are in such a weird position, is that ordinarily a team like this is eager to dump expiring contracts, and they just do not have very many expiring contracts. It's basically only Aguilar who has the mutual option next year, which never gets picked up. I'm always confused why teams and players negotiate a mutual option, because there's always a difference in opinion between the two sides as to what that player should be earning next year. And unfortunately with Aggie, he has been less productive than Cooper by a pretty big margin, and that's why it's very hard to find a landing spot for him relative to other first basemen. He's just not that good. As Victor mentioned here, I did put this in the article as well, that one of the few teams that maybe makes sense for either Cooper or Aggie is the Brewers. Their main first baseman is Rowdy Tellez, a lefty hitter. They don't really have a great backup first baseman behind him, and they have, at this moment, I still think they have three catchers on the roster. They have this really awkward roster. Three catchers on their active roster at the same time. And I think a better fit would be like a backup first baseman, a part-time DH. I think Cooper is overqualified for that. With Aggie, they at least have that connection. But then again, this is the same group that traded Aggie away a few years ago to the Rays. It's an interesting situation. If he's going to go anywhere, if there's a team that might actually give up something to get him, maybe it's the Brewers. I think no matter what, the only way that they get anything in return for Aguilar is if they eat basically all the money that is still owed to him. It's it's like $2.5 million still owed the rest of this year, and with the buyout of his option. And the Marlins, if they want anything in return, I think they have to pay for that, which is what they did last year for Starling Marte. if people remember. I don't think they get Luzardo unless they eat a lot or all the money that Starling was owed the rest of last year. That's something they could be willing to do. And we're less than 24 hours away from finding out if they are willing to do so.
And going back, I want to go back a little bit and talk about last year's deadline. And how do you think this compares to last year? Were the Marlins in the same position as they were now in terms of just how many trades they've done? Marlins still haven't made any trades, and compared to last year, this is a similar trajectory that we might see, or are they just in the same, going in the same route that they were last season in terms of the trade deadline and where we're at right now?
I wonder if I have the screenshot anywhere, because last year they did make a couple trades prior to the deadline. They traded Marte with 2 days to go. I think this is perfect. I think I just found it. They traded Marte and Yimi both with 2 days to go. Last year it was a July 30th deadline, and that the biggest splash was the Marte deal. That I remember how that played out very vividly in my mind from all of Mish's reporting. Once the All-Star break passed and they couldn't reach an extension, then it seemed like a formality that he was going to get dealt. And the team was in Baltimore for their final series before the deadline, and they didn't even bother playing Marte during that series. They worked out a deal with 2 days to go, sending him to Luzardo. And I guess half of their business was done 2 days prior, and we are now less than 1 day prior to the deadline. So this is a different story this year, and I think fans can naturally be kind of anxious about what's going on, because the fact that they've gotten this close to the deadline and not done anything, and not really seem to be getting close to doing anything for a team that has a lot of business to take care of between now and the deadline. They don't have to trade. They really don't have. They're not under pressure to trade any particular player aside from Aggie. But we've talked about this over and over again, that the roster just does not fit together. There are guys that are just getting in the way of younger players who can better use August and September to prove themselves. Both the position players, especially on that side, but also in the bullpen. If they go through this deadline without trading multiple relievers, without getting rid of Aguilar, then to me, it's going to be a disappointment. You could say even a failure if they don't act on that and get something in return for their future for these guys that you feel are kind of replaceable internally. I'm not going to jump on them until the deadline actually passes. It's looking increasingly unlikely that's going to be a busy deadline for the team if they've literally done nothing this close to it.
Yeah, Isaac, looking at this trade deadline that happened last season, what sticks out to you now that a year has passed? What really stands in your mind when you're looking at all these trades from last season?
Unfortunately, I think Eli said it best, man. This was July 28th. It was obviously the deadline days are on different days, August 1st this year rather than July 30th. But like you said, 24 hours till the deadline, and not one thing has been done. Not one. And there are some pretty blatant moves that could be done. I think last year, like Eli said, the formality was that Marte was going to be traded. I think it was like a foregone conclusion. It was 100%. And they did do that. That we were hearing teams, we were hearing reports. So that was like the one trade that got done early. And we thought there would be more to be done on July 30th after Duvall and Curtis. I remember that clearly. And so it was a little bit of a surprise when they were done with that. This year, Aguilar could be that guy, although he's a lot less attractive than Marte, to contenders. But there's still a lot of things that could be done. Obviously the Marlins, I don't think they're trying anymore for this year, right? So Anthony Bass has to be traded, you think. And the fact that we've just heard no reporting on teams, it's tough. So to me, Kim was a little bit more aggressive last year, but then again, she also had that blue chip guy that was a for sure got to be traded. So I think this year maybe it's a little bit different. So who knows? Maybe she learned a little bit from last year, maybe she didn't. We'll see how it happens. But yeah, I think we can't get mad until 6 p.m. tomorrow. But it's not looking good. It's not looking like it's going to be a very active deadline for the Miami Marlins.
Is it safe to say that the best trade here is the Brian De La Cruz one, or is it still Luzardo, or how would you guys look at that?
No, I think Luzardo has shown that he's better than De La Cruz. Obviously, it's hard to exactly compare them, but I don't know if Eli thinks differently. I think Luzardo's pretty good.
Maybe Brian Mitchell. How's he doing? That was a pretty big deal on July 29th last year.
Wait, what does it say there? I'm not looking.
Where's
Yes,
Austin
him as a
Riley?
minor league free agent. I think they cut him again. I know he was pitching in the organization for a big chunk of this year. He's a former Yankee, and that was his connection. I'm pretty sure that was like a Gary Denbo signing for some reason. Like that was weird. That was very weird that they brought him aboard. I was somebody that was a big skeptic of Luzardo based on what I saw last year, and he really surprised me and opened some eyes right before he got hurt. And unfortunately, he did get hurt. And now he's back and his smiling face, and they have a great opportunity, just like last year, to stick him in the rotation the rest of the season and find out exactly what he has. And I'm optimistic that he is simply an improved pitcher from where he was last year. It all starts, most of all, with just this confidence he has in his breaking ball to use it in every count and to use it in different ways, like to get ahead in counts, and then more importantly, to put hitters away. His confidence in that pitch has, early in the year, it was resulting in him becoming a really great strikeout pitcher, like as good as anybody on the team. I think I was looking this up, that to this point this year, he struck out, what was the number, 34% of batters faced. And that was higher than anybody else that has pitched any significant innings, even more so than any of the relievers in this bullpen. And he was doing it twice through an order and sometimes 3 times through an order. So it's really exciting to have him back, to have him avoid surgery. That was a concern whenever somebody has a lengthy IL stint with a forearm issue. You worry about the elbow and the structural integrity of that. But he's back. And yeah, so I'm excited to see him beginning tonight and the rest of the year. And that will guide, to some extent, exactly what they do if Pablo sticks around. It really depends on all these younger, less proven, less consistent starters performing well down the stretch. You have a good problem if you enter the offseason and you feel like most of these other rotation candidates, if they are a close comparable to Pablo, then you can reevaluate things. But this is why I've been against the idea of trading Pablo now, is because everybody else in this rotation outside of Sandy, I think, is a significant step down from Pablo in terms of what you can realistically respect on a start to start basis.
Let's obviously, the second half of last season for Luzardo was tough. He was, changing teams. He was having a tough year with Oakland. Let's say he comes back and he looks like the 2022 April Luzardo, and he just has a great August and September. Is he someone that you can see them trying to flip for one of those, high impact infield bats from a contender?
Yeah, I can absolutely see that as somebody that I think, just based on what he showed in a small sample, he looks improved. And I'm a little distracted right now with the news that Austin Riley for the next 2 years.
Wow.
$212 million.
Holy shit.
Let's talk. We could change the subject on Luzardo.
Oh my
really
God.
quick. That's a big deal.
Forget
Austin Riley from the Braves, third baseman. We're going to see him here against Miami for at least guaranteed 10 years. That's a big average. That's $21.2 million annual average.
Let me get this on the screen for people to see.
Yeah, that's the big deal. Isaac, tell me about Austin Riley. What are we seeing
here?
The
guy has a Barry Bonds type month in the month of July, and they reward him with $212 million. I think Ozzie Albies and Ronald Acuna has to be looking at these contracts and saying, what the bleep?
Isn't Albies $35 million for like 7 years or something?
This is like years? 8 years, yeah. And Acuna's, I think, is $100 million flat. Wow. That is amazing. 10 years for a guy who really struggled in his
same
first
contract
cup
to give
of
out
coffee.
the block.
Wow. That's all I can say right now as well.
Yeah, you know what? Craig Mish is somebody that was on Austin Riley very early in his career. And if people remember Riley, like, he raked in his first few weeks in the majors, and then he hit a really bad slump. And ever since then, he's kind of dug out of it the last 2 years to emerge as maybe the best third baseman in baseball. Like, that's not hyperbole. He's been that good since especially the start of 2021. Wow. And this year, as you mentioned, what he's been doing over the last month, like, I think he hit almost as many home runs in July as the entire Marlins team did. He's been their best player. He's been the biggest reason why they are almost assured of going back to the postseason. Acuna has not been nearly as good as they had hoped he was in returning to form this year. And Austin Riley has picked up the slack. He's amazing, and I'm still at the process this number of money and to think of its actual fair value for both sides. But it's a lot more than they paid Matt Olson. It's 2 additional years and a higher average value, and this comes, of course, in the if you go back far enough to the offseason, the fact that they had an opportunity to just keep Freddie Freeman around and kind of got outbid by the Dodgers in that process. So to see, this is frightening for the Marlins, just to not only just keeping players around, but to see their willingness to spend this kind of money on players. The Braves historically have not been spending at the highest market levels, and they have kind of filled the void, I guess you could say, the Nationals, where the Nationals were a team for most of this last decade that have been willing to spend and take on bad deals and do what it takes to form a well-rounded team. And now, just as the Nationals are fading into oblivion, the Braves are turning into a really, really frightening rival to have in this division.
Oh my goodness, it's 20 million club option for 2033, 15 million next year, 21 million in 2024, 22 million dollars a year for the rest of the deal, all the way through 2032. Holy cow. They got a good one, man. That could just absolutely break his
stats are just insane. 301 average, basic 29, 30 home runs, 68 RBIs, a 9.64 OPS as we bring in vet Alex Carver.
Yeah, I'm going to put him up so that you can see his face.
Alex, Austin Riley getting paid. It's Charles LeBlanc getting 12 years, $300 million next.
No, but I was just reading it as well as you guys put it on the screen. Wow. Yeah, he got a deal, man. Holy crap. It's a lot of money, but a great player, man. And that's a cornerstone. So that's what teams that are serious about keeping their cornerstones do, is they pay up. So I think it's a great move by the Braves. Congratulations to Austin Riley, because he deserves it.
He has 61 extra base hits this year. Do the Marlins even have 61 extra base hits?
Yeah, man.
61 extra base hits? Are you shitting me? This guy's nasty.
Right. And just as it seems with a lot of these Braves players, man, he's been really durable for them over the past few years to this point, which is why I guess they feel comfortable with the length of this deal. Oh, man. It's just, it must be fun to be a Braves fan.
Yeah.
Is this like what we hoped Brian Anderson would have turned into, but didn't?
It's been a little different in that Riley came up with the power, and you just had questions about everything else, and he has developed everything else. And with BA, he came up with a lot of good things we liked, and we were wondering if his power could ever reach the next level. And it's been the opposite, unfortunately, largely because of the shoulder issues, in my opinion, that his power has regressed. And this guy has, it is just very impressive that they do.
Is he a top 10 player in baseball, Austin Riley?
Top 15, yeah.
I told you, I think he's the best third baseman in baseball. Okay. I'm thinking about where he compares to other positions. I guess he has to be in that conversation. He's special. He's a guy that if you get him for, I guess they're valuing his free agent years in the mid-20s million this far in advance. That seems pretty reasonable. It's going to come down, as in a lot of cases, it's going to come down to his health. I guess it's going to come down to whether he continues to be a disciplined hitter. Like there's last year to this year, even last year, there were a lot of strikeouts in him, and that's been a big improvement year to year as well. The reason why he's even better than ever here in 2022. I think a lot of people perhaps, as Navi brings up now, Michael Harris, their latest homegrown star, watch them lock him up very early on to a super efficient deal. To this point, they have too many. They're eventually going to reach the point where they have too many good players to give them all long-term contracts.
That's right. Michael Harris
not reached that point yet
this season.
I was curious, Eli. How does this affect Rafael Devers?
Ooh, no, that's an interesting comparison.
Yeah.
Devers being somebody that is not far behind Riley in terms of being an overall great third baseman, and I know that Devers is even younger than Riley is to this point. and or they're about the same age, I should say. So that's going to be surely a comp that comes up in his extension talks with the Red Sox. And if they are unable to extend Devers, then that's going to be something that comes up potentially as soon as this offseason if Devers gets traded to another team. I think this is a very fair deal for him to bring up in negotiations. I think he could get something relatively similar for sure.
Wow. Through his age 36 season. Alex, well, we can go from one third baseman to another one. We were talking a little bit about Charles LeBlanc. How have you seen him so far this season as we're dwindling down towards the end of the year?
It's insane.
Well, as you can see, it should have happened a long time before now. That's number one. We all know it. The day before they call him up, you heard what Craig Mish said. You guys on your guys' show. I'm glad that thinking changed, presumably overnight, that they called that guy up. So I mean, he definitely deserves to be where he is. Almost hit 2 home runs the other night. I mean, the first volley he hit off the wall was a home run in like 24 ballparks. So that one easily could have gone. It's just a scrappy dude, man. And he hits for good power, which is like something that you wouldn't expect out of a player like this, but he hits the baseball, man. And when he hits the baseball, he does good things. So guy's good. Is he a cornerstone starting third baseman or infielder? No, but he's a solid utility player and he deserves this chance. So I'm really glad for him. I'm happy for his family. He definitely deserves it. And I honestly, other than Josh Naylor, I think, right? I think only him is the only one only Canadian player that I can remember playing for this team. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But there's not a lot of Canadians that have played for the Marlins, but they have one right now.
Well, now we're dwindling down time. It took us this long to get into the series and talk about this because a lot of stuff going on and maybe a little depressing of a series going into it. What are you guys looking in this lineups? What are you guys looking for in this series? And what stands out to you guys when looking at these lineups?
Isaac mentioned before we were recording the fact that Lewin is hitting third to this point where I can't say I'm overwhelmingly impressed by what he's shown in a small sample. I guess it's nice. You'd rather see him batting up there than Avi Garcia as opposed, but I think it just speaks to where this lineup is in terms of actual, like what you can expect from their production side. Like this is going to be tough to watch, I think, in most of these games just because of the lack of experience and the way that a lot of these players, I mean, outside of Blade, who we like his approach. And of course, Wendell is like the one consistent guy now at the very top of the lineup. I mean, look at this whole, there's a lot of tough plate appearance. There's a lot of, I should say, ugly plate appearances in this lineup with still Jesus Sanchez playing a lot and Avi right in the middle. And even Miguel Rojas has kind of been less good over the last month or so than he was kind of in May and in June. It's not going to score. It's not going to score very many runs unless Charles LeBlanc puts a team on his back.
And another day where Nick Fortes is not starting.
Yes.
It's like Jesus Luzardo.
Great.
Why not throw him against Nick Fortes? Have him throw to Nick Fortes, I should say. So much better than that's just one where I don't understand it at all. I know you're going to have Sandy on Wednesday, so you have a for sure stalling start there. Why not give Fortes 2 of the 3? So instead you're going to have Fortes, I would assume, catches tomorrow. I think it's Garrett. So, yeah, if you'd think Fortes catches tomorrow. But I would like to see Fortes starting to catch 2 of the 3 games for this team. But they're just so hesitant on doing that. I'm not sure why.
Yeah, and Alex, you're mentioning Canadians. Navi points out Zach Pop.
That is true. Zach Pop is. You guys know I don't like to think about Zach Pop. No knock on Zach Pop, but I don't think about that name too often. So my bad, Navi. But yeah, thanks for pointing that out. But yeah, who else other than those two? I guess is my point. Like Naylor never played for the Marlins. Tristan Pompey never played for the Marlins. Like
Justin Morneau was Canadian.
Okay.
I didn't play for the Marlins, but I was just naming.
Okay, yeah. Was he ever on the Marlins? I don't think so. Right?
I was just naming Canadians.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, other than those two, have the Marlins ever had a Canadian baseball player or somebody born in Canada play for them? I can't think of any offhand. So maybe a good Jeopardy question.
Trade just happened right now. Probably nothing to go with the Marlins, but still fun to talk about. Christian Vasquez going to the Astros from the Boston Red Sox. So Just another trade there happening. A lot of stuff. A lot of trades featuring teams not from Miami. So
Exactly. So what's the common denominator again? Like just like the offseason, teams are making moves and the Marlins are doing nothing. So that's your common denominator as you see all these trades come in, is that it's the same old approach that they just don't care to do anything until it's probably going to be too late.
I'm thinking that we were talking about that earlier, Alex, that, we at least let's give it till 6 o'clock tomorrow. But you're right. At this point last year, they had already traded Marte. They had already done a couple of moves. And at this point, they've done absolutely nothing. I think the one slam dunk, or maybe even a second, is that if on August 3rd, Jesus Aguilar is in the lineup, unless Garrett Cooper isn't back, or let's say August 5th, Jesus Aguilar is playing for this team, whether he's not traded or whether he's not, just designated for assignment. That's just a huge miss. And if you don't trade Anthony Bass, I think that's another just monumental miss. Look at all these contenders, what they would give for a player of this caliber pitching the way he has with a cheap 3-year deal for next season. If they don't do one of those two things, if they just stand pat and we're still seeing Aggie and Avi 3 and 4 respectively, it's just a colossal disaster.
Yeah. Victor wants to clarify that sitting on your hands is doing something. So they're not literally doing nothing.
They're not doing anything positive. Let's say
they're
that.
just they're in spectate mode. They're not in the action. They're just spectating. I wanted to ask Eli tomorrow before the game. Are we doing a special trade deadline stream, or is that something?
I think we'll just do a Twitter space that I'll host from Fish Stripes. Yeah, we'll probably start it up at like 5 o'clock and go through the start of the game at 6:40. I think that's the plan, and we'll have people hop in as they do. Yeah, I think I was wrong today. I thought they would make a trade before today's game. I thought they had so much stuff to do, and they're going to end up doing something today instead of leaving it all to the last minute. And I was incorrect about that. But tomorrow they'll do at least one thing. I say pretty optimistically, at least one thing tomorrow. Hopefully,
hold that for predictions.
Speaking of doing something today, Eli, I didn't get an update on this, so I'm assuming they did not. But what did they do with Evan Kress? Did they sign him or did they not sign him?
Oh no, they didn't.
They did.
They did.
I have not heard confirmation one way or another.
Because I haven't seen anything, which would lead me to believe no, but who knows?
Yeah. The deadline to sign draft picks, he was the last unsigned pick. And to me, I've mentioned this, that I think it was very important that if they did sign him, it would very significantly improve the way that we should feel about this draft class, to have somebody like him, a prep arm with his upside. But I don't think there's no confirmation one way or the other. But the deadline has passed, and I'm sure we'll find out for sure very soon about it. It doesn't look good, though.
Yeah, I mean, maybe this year's Ivan Melendez. Anyways, I'm getting off the point. Just to go back really quick before predictions, really quick to mention something. If they do nothing, who knows? Maybe Avi Garcia's luck will turn around. That's all I got. Go ahead, predictions.
Now we're talking about prediction time. We barely got into the series because so much stuff with trades and deals, and this series isn't. It's who knows what's going to happen. Let's start with Isaac. So for this predictions, as always, your series prediction, your MVP. And for the trade deadline, give me how many total trades the Marlins make from right now until the trade deadline, as we see here in our leaderboard with Eli, Kevin, myself, Isaac, Alex, Noah, and I believe Lewis and Brent rounding out the top.
This is trades, not roster moves. Trades.
Trade one team, another one. So series.
I will say
how many total trades?
One trade. And I think that's Anthony Bass being traded. That's it.
And your series prediction and MVP?
Eli, is it too early for an IDC prediction for the series for
You'd be forfeiting your points. But
now there's incentive. I'm sorry. Yeah, there's incentive to get these right now. I guess that's the only thing that Let's go with Marlins, Braxton, Luzardo. Yeah, let's go with Marlins. Take 2 out of 3, and I'll give it to Braxton Garrett.
Oh, okay. Eli, your predictions and MVP and total trades.
I also have Marlins winning 2 out of 3 in the series against the Reds. It's a popular pick, but I'll go with it. I'll say that Charles LeBlanc stays hot and wins MVP, and that he starts at least 2 of these 3 games and makes an impact. So why not? And in terms of trades, as annoying as this approach to the deadline has been, I do think they will be busy between tonight and tomorrow and make 3 trades. That's my prediction.
Okay.
Are we saying number of trades or number of players that get traded?
Total number of trades.
Good. Okay, so 3 trades. 3 trades.
3 trades for the 3.
Anthony Bass. Well, I think they're going to combine players. I think it's going to be more than 3 players. They'll do some packaging involved in this, involving Bass, at least one of the other relievers, whether it's Okert or Floro. And I mean, they're going to do stuff, I think, with these minor league guys as well that Alex keeps harping on it. All these guys that are Rule 5 eligible, you're not going to have room to protect all of them. And at this point, honestly, you're just not going to have room to even test them all out in the big leagues. I think some of them get traded in a creative deal that brings back what could be a very interesting lower level prospect that's not on the 40-man yet. So I think it's going to be an interesting day. But Pablo, as I said before, I think you have to assume at this point he's likely to stay. So not Pablo. And some other guys. And
are those moves things that you would do, or are those things that you genuinely think is possible for Kim to accomplish? Like, do you think she'll actually do it?
This is predictions. Yeah, I'm predicting that they're going to do some interesting things that align with the priorities that I think a lot of us recognize. And so the most obvious thing, the simplest thing is that you have all these relievers that, well, not all these relievers, you have several relievers that could help contenders right now. And if you like the pitching on your farm system, you need to trust them to replace these guys, which means trading ones, beginning with Bass, but also potentially including Okert and Floro. So it's going to be 3 trades. That's my prediction.
All right. Alex, total trades, prediction, and MVP. Oh, you're muted.
My prediction's obvious. Marlins sweep and Charles LeBlanc. I mean, that's easy. So Marlins sweep, Charles LeBlanc's the MVP. These Reds pitchers' ERAs, if they can't beat these guys, then they need to sell everything they can. Anyways, yeah, Marlins are going to sweep the series, I think. And I'll go with LeBlanc. For trades, how many total trades?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm pretty sure they're going to stay on the same track of not doing much. So, two trades.
2 trades? All right.
Yeah. Bass, and I agree with Eli. Like, you have to do something with these players or risk losing them for absolutely nothing. So a lot of those, or some of those guys will likely be gone. Other major league guys, can they get rid of Jesus Aguilar with the money that he's owed? Probably not. Maybe they can find somebody to take him. I honestly doubt it. Brian Anderson's injured.
Hey, hold up. We did have a trade right now.
Marlins?
The Reds team we're going up against just traded Tommy
Pham. Thank God.
I literally said I said on the site that Pham was a logical trade target, but that he's been playing so badly that I thought nobody would want him. And it turns out that I guess so.
Reds trade.
Was he in the lineup? Was he in the lineup?
Yes, he was.
Wow.
That makes it so spicy.
Wow.
Wait, yes, he was. He's sitting. Oh, yeah. Let's put it on TV. I want to see him get the hugs.
He's hugging.
Dude, this is such a cool business. You just trade a guy when he flew to Miami to play.
That's the game, bro.
I got Tyler Naquin. He went with the Marlins playing to come to Miami.
I think the coolest one was Benintendi because they were playing the same exact time.
Let me give some predictions from those who aren't here. Noah has Marlins take 2, LeBlanc MVP. He has 1 trade for Miami.
Watch Brent go 0 for 10 with 3 Ks.
Brent has Marlins 2, LeBlanc, and he has 2 trades. And then last but not least, Kevin, Marlins take 2 out of 3, and then he has Sandy MVP. He didn't put how many trades, so I'm just going to go with 0. I'm going to go 0 for Kevin. And then my prediction, I have Miami take 2 out of 3. Let's go MVP. Why not? I'm going to go Jacob Stallings. He's been hot as of late. That means Nick Fortes is probably not going to play. I hope that I'm wrong. Jacob Stallings isn't MVP, but why not? I wanted to go different, and I'm going to go 2 trades, like what Alex said. They're not going to do a lot, but they are going to do something. Just really quick, what are you guys seeing there with Tommy Pham, and is that something that the Marlins, in terms of just them, does that line up the Marlins in terms of getting trades started for them?
I did tweet out the other day that Tommy Pham should be the Marlins center fielder next season. So I don't know if maybe the Marlins traded for him. Maybe they saw that and said, "Hey, that satire tweet makes sense."
Oh.
Well,
I was muted. I meant to actually respond to you, but I muted myself by mistake. So I meant to say before we get out of here, super followers predictions from Romeo, because he's in the chat. He said Marlins sweep and LeBlanc MVP. You had another pick for LeBlanc. And I blanked out on Daniel. How many trades did you say you were predicting?
2. I have 2.
2. So let me put that in here.
2 trades. And then Kevin didn't put, so for Kevin, just put a 0. We'll put a nice 0 for Kevin.
I mean, honestly, that's probably the most accurate one.
I think I might. I think I'm getting Kevin 3 points there. But
as we wind this up, you only have to worry about yourself in terms of posing. Oh, well, Alex brought his video back. So it's only you two that need to look pretty for the prediction screenshot.
I'm going to turn it off again.
I'll be the only one.
So really quick, 1-word answer. How many trades by the end of the Marlins game for the Marlins tonight?
0.
Daniel?
0.
Eli?
0 after the game.
Okay, fine. I guess I got to agree.
But yeah, the trade did happen right before the game. Tommy Pham out. Any idea who you guys might think will be in? Really quick.
Who could it be too is the question.
I was looking at their roster before, but Pham has been playing almost every single day for them, which is why they don't have a whole lot of. Have they even put out an updated lineup?
And he has to be in the outfield with Jock Peterson.
Yeah, their other outfielders are Fraley. What is his name?
Jake Fraley? Yeah, that's what
I like him.
Oh, he's from Seattle.
Yeah, they recently brought him up. Yeah.
Okay.
He actually came to speak to my high school baseball team when he was with, I think it was with LSU, wherever he was in college. He's cool.
All right. Well, I think that does it. We're going a little bit over time. I want to thank all of you guys for watching. We had a lot of people in the stream. I want to thank you guys for coming on. Isaac, who this is his flu game, or flu stream, I should say. Alex for coming in last minute, just for coming on. Eli always helping out. This is Daniel for Alex, Isaac, Eli for everyone who couldn't be on. This is Fish Traps Live, and always go fish.